Most people have a really bizarre notion of wealth and money in our world. This is across all um, all nations, but I think it's particularly strong in, say, America or any particular region that emphasizes metrics, for example. And the reason why I say it's a bizarre notion is that we tie money to status, and tie money and wealth to legitimacy in this world, which are really kind of unusual, difficult things to sort of think about. But really, what I'm talking about is that people believe that those people are somehow superior in some sort of way, and we defer to their judgment. We defer and we think that they're more legitimate because of the wealth that they possess or something along those lines. And we look to see at what people do, and we get signals of their legitimacy and status in this world. So we look at things like owning a fancy car, for example, owning a Lambo. We look to see at what clothes they wear. We look to see at what does the house look like that they live in. We look to see at how many houses that they own. All these kind of things are really tied to status and legitimacy in this world. And I actually want to persuade you to not think about money in that way. That's an important part of life. And I think that's a very real part of life, but we always have to push back. But the one way that I want you to think about money and wealth is in terms of opportunities, rather than thinking of it of some sort of status signal to somebody else. So if you don't know me, I am Professor Dave Maslock. I'm Associate Professor of Innovation Strategy and Entrepreneurship. And I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There's so many people that help me out that I want to pay the favor forward to help you out as much as I possibly can. So this is a lesson that was partly taught from my parents. Partly taught me this, to not look at signals of status, but they didn't teach me the other latter part of it, that money actually gives you opportunities. And I think this is a really important thing. This is something that I've had to learn through many years of education in many different areas. I'm an engineer. I've learned sociology, psychology, economics, all sorts of different things. Business, actually, that's my area. And the way that I actually think about this is along the lines of that it's just opportunities. So all you're doing is accumulating something that you could trade in the future for some other resources or something else that'll allow you to do something that's really cool. That's why it's really important for you to save money, because it's just opportunities in the form of something that everybody recognizes as opportunities. It's nothing to do with like how much your status is and all that kind of stuff. That's a bunch of baloney. But what you want to look at is, how can you use this in the future to make your life better? And there's lots of different ways that you can use it to make your life better. You could sort of play that status game in the legitimacy game where you signal to other people, and that's totally fine, right? Like when I in 6 more months, I'm going to get a new car, and it's probably going to be a nice car, but it's such a tiny fraction of what we've accumulated over the last few years, that I don't feel bad about buying it. And that's the way that you should sort of think about these things, right? So you want to think about the assets that you're buying, the resources that you're buying with the money that you have. It's just another form of resources. So think of it. Another way that you can think of it is in terms of, sometimes you might think about like energy transfer in physics. This is where you change from like a physical form of energy to, electrical energy, to heat energy, to different forms of energy like this. And when you sort of transfer it from one thing to the next, you lose some, there's frictions that are involved, and you lose some of that energy. But you can always transform it back. And that's the way that you should be sort of thinking about money, is that it is, you can change it into this one sort of form of of resources that you can change and form it into a different way where you can do wonderful things with that, right? So what you'd want to do is think about, various different aspects of your life that are meaningful and important to you. So it might be, making sure that there's heat in your home. That's a really important thing, or cooling in Florida. That's super important. Um, you know, you might want to think about, like, just basic utilities and things like that, and basic aspects of your life like eating, and you're just transferring that money into a different resource that you can consume and think about it in a different way. Now, this is where a lot of people get mixed up, and this is where I think, going back, I would hopefully teach my own kids this. Thinking of these resources, a portion of what you're looking at and what you're trying to do is transferring some of this money that you've earned. So work turns into money, right? So it's like that energy transfer. You work, it'll turn into money, and then you want to keep some of that as some long-term optionality in your life, and short-term optionality, something that's in the moderate to short-term, where you're holding on to some of those resources. That's where saving is actually really positive. And you want to think about sort of short-term savings. So this would be, for us, we're saving up for a car at this point. And so we're saving up for a car. It might be saving up for, an upgrade for your house or something like that. But another thing that you should be thinking about is, like, okay, what's the long-term game here? We want to think about, not only saving for retirement, that's a fraction of what you should be thinking about, but how can you have the largest impact with what you're doing? And so you'd want to save for, maybe giving some money to your kids, inheritance, and as well as maybe making a larger impact once you're done in this world, right? So having a huge donation to some place, for example. And so all you're doing is you're shifting these things around and changing the resources that you can move to different ways. And so that's basically what investing is. It's a nicer way to think of investing, rather than making a bunch of, just going and making the quick win and then you're driving around in a Lambo. That kind of stinks, I think. That is a really stinky way to think about it. But instead, what you want to be thinking about is taking some of these resources that you've earned and then putting it into other things that you think, that's a good option. I think that might actually grow and do well in this world. So, I would highly recommend, this is basically what we do, is S&P 500 index funds, and as well as mutual funds. We do a lot of those things. Just really like super basic things. And what you're doing is you're with those resources, or what you're doing with that money is you're thinking, like, man, there's people that are really smart in this world. There's a lot of people that are smart in America. There's a lot of people that are smart in Canada. There's lots of people that are smart all over in Europe and Asia and Africa and South America. And there's really smart people. So why not put some of that money into those smart people? And that's really what you're doing when you're buying into a company, buying stocks into a company. It's nothing really like fancy. You're just thinking, like, hey, you know what? There's some really smart people that are out there. And I want to take advantage of them and give them a little bit of boost, because I think they're better than me. Let's give them a little bit of boost. Let's give them a little bit of money. And then hopefully, if you spread it out over all of those really smart people, 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 of those people are going to do something spectacular, and they're going to really open up the resources for themselves, and then you could take advantage of that. That's where profits come from. So what you're really looking for is this way to transform the work that you have into another form of energy. That's really what money is. And then transforming it back into other forms of, what gives you pleasure or long-term benefit in some sort of way. And I think where people get mixed up is that, even when you're not making that much money, a lot of people think that you can't be, investing and doing those kind of things. It's not really that true. There's a certain level where that's actually true. There's lots of people that are definitely desperate. However, there's always something that you can take and invest and transform it into something else. So even if you're on the streets of Bangladesh, for example, and you're smart enough and you make just a little bit, just a hair, right? Like you're somebody that's making $1 a day, and they're working all the time, but instead of money, they're not using money, but maybe they can, they can save up other things that are beautiful, or something that they can draw, or something along those lines. Well, they save it up, and eventually you have a collection of those things, whatever that is. Maybe it's beautiful drawings, something, and then from that, they can maybe find a different way to transform that into something else. And so even the smallest, what you'd consider somebody that's making very little income around the world can do this. And it's in proportion to what they're doing. Now, you don't want to spend all of your time and money investing in stuff. That's nuts. That's crazy. But you want to think about ways, and hopefully this reaches a lot of people around this world. Think about ways that you can transform your energy into a different resource that will leverage what you've done. Now, it's tricky in some countries because it's not easy to invest. It's not, there's lots of different things, right? There's thresholds that you have to get to, and you're not at the right stage in your life, but you can invest in your education. You can go and learn some new skills. Maybe you're in Brazil, on the streets of Brazil, for example. You can go and pick up a few skills on how to sell something better. Go watch somebody that's selling really well, and see how they're selling. What's the trick that they're doing? Spend a little bit of your time thinking about how you can sell better to do better with what you're doing. And that's really what I'm thinking about here. Money is one way to sort of imagine this, but it could be anything. And that's all you're trading off, is those resources that you have available. Money is easy to sort of think about, but there's all sorts of things. Your creativity, the resources that you have available, your effort, your drive, your passion, all those kind of things are really amazing. And dedicating and finding ways that you can leverage that in different ways are really important. And that's how you're going to level up. And I'm not saying that you can be, the next Jeff Bezos. A lot of people in certain parts of their life can't do that, or certain locations. That's impossible, virtually impossible, because it's sort of system and the society and stuff like that is set up a way that sort of limits that possibility. However, you can really level up in many different ways so that you're really happy, that you have a great family, that you're enjoying the world around you. All of those things are really incredibly important that we forget about. And we don't have to become the next Jeff Bezos. That's a fluke phenomenon that actually happened. And you want to just focus on what you can do right in your immediate vicinity, what you're doing right now, like here. That is the more important thing. Don't worry about the Jeff Bezos of this world. Imagine what you're doing and leverage what you can do to turn into something that's wonderful. So hopefully you learned a little bit. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Do subscribe to the YouTube channel. Take care, and have a wonderful day. Bye.